Good morning, friends. Welcome to the sixth lecture of functional analysis. In this lecture, we are going to see what is the norm of the continuous linear transformation. In the last lecture, we have seen the properties of continuous linear transformation. Some of the important properties are if the transformation mapping T from n to n dash from a nonlinear space into nonlinear space n dash is linear, then continuous implies and implied by boundedness. That is, the mapping is continuous implies and implied by it is bounded. Similarly, if mapping is continuous implies and implied by it maps bounded sets into bounded set of a nonlinear space n into bounded set of nonlinear space n dash. Likewise, we have seen many important properties. Now today we will move ahead towards the norm of a bounded linear operator or continuous linear transformation. Actually, norm is the concept of a length or a distance of a given vector from the origin. Now, involving how to find out the norm of a function or a continuous linear transformation is a challenging one. Therefore, let us have a look on the definition. Let me share my screen. Yes, uh, we will start. We are going to look at the definition of norm of a continuous linear transformation. Then we will see some important theorems and examples. The definition of norm of a continuous linear transformation or bounded linear transformation. Why we have written bounded, either continuous, because if a mapping is linear, then continuous is implies and implied by boundedness. This is what we have proved in the last lecture. Therefore, this is a norm of bounded or continuous linear transformation. Okay, let us start. Let T is a continuous linear transformation. Then we define its norm by norm T is equal to supremum norm T of x on the condition norm x is less than or equals to 1. And whatever is this, we have written suprema of norm T of x for norm x less than or equals to 1 is called as a operator norm. Now, you may remember the theorem we have proved initially, that a nonlinear space is complete if and only if the set of collection of all the vectors with the condition norm x is less than or equals to 1, norm x is equal to 1 is complete. Therefore, there is a big role of that closed unit sphere while proving the completeness of a nonlinear space. Therefore, here also in the definition itself, the set under the consideration from a domain was taken with the collection of those vectors which satisfies the condition norm x is less than or equals to 1. Means those vectors which have a distance either 1 or less than 1 from the origin. And therefore, again, it is going to construct the unit sphere. All the points on the boundary of a unit sphere as well as in the interior of the unit sphere. We'll just have a look how this definition is going to work. Okay, for this, let me show you this. This is of another PDF. Suppose this is a domain N, this is a codomain N dash, and this is a mapping we are taking a continuous linear transformation from N to N dash. Okay. Now we are collecting those vectors x which satisfies the condition norm x is less than or equals to 1. Okay. Means this is my unit sphere under the consideration. All the points on the boundary as well as in the interior will be under the consideration. Okay. Now, if I take an arbitrary point x in this unit sphere, then where will be the image T of x? The T image of this vector x must be a member of a codomain N dash. Let it be somewhere here, T of x, right? Then what norm T of x is giving us? Norm T of x is giving us distance of this vector T of x from the origin. Now origin, that is a additive identity of this vector space N dash, we have denoted by some 0 dash. Here for the domain we have taken 0. Okay. Therefore, norm T of x is the distance of this T of x from the origin itself. To understand the definition in a simple manner, here I have shown a shortest distance between the two vectors, origin and t of x. Therefore, let this be norm t of x. Okay. Now this we have to find for all the vectors x, which are the members of this unit sphere, right? Then find out the corresponding values of norm t of x. Suppose there are infinite points actually, say x1, x2, dot up to dot so on. Okay. Therefore, what about their t images? The t images will be somewhere tx1, tx2, tx3, and so on dot. Okay. Then we have to find out the distance of all those vectors tx1, tx2, tx3, and so on. Distance of all these vectors from the origin. Okay. Means we will get the values of norm of t of x1, norm of t of x2, norm of t of x3, and so on. Okay. Once we find all those values, we have to find out the supremum. Supremum means it's a maximum length, right? The vector, the length of a vector, which is giving us the maximum length from the origin. Okay. Therefore, that maximum length, the vector which is giving us the maximum length from the origin of a nonlinear space n dash was considered to be norm of an operator, and this was the definition prescribed here. Okay. Therefore, look at the definition again. Norm t is supremum norm of t of x on the condition norm x is less than or equals to y. Okay. This is what the way of norm of a transformation, rather a continuous linear transformation, was defined. Okay. Now we will have a look to the next theorem. Next theorem is giving us an idea about some equivalent conditions about the for the definition of this norm of the transformation, right? Here we are going to follow a notation for set of all bounded linear transformations or set of all continuous linear transformations from n into n dash as b of n comma n dash. Here the letter b is intended to suggest the adjective, say bounded. No? We are collecting all bounded linear transformations from n to n dash. Okay. Now coming to that important theorem which is giving us the equivalent statements for finding the norm of an operator. Okay. Therefore, the definition says that, theorem says that let n and n dash be the norm linear spaces, T be a bounded linear operator, that is continuous linear transformation of n into n dash. Then prove that norm T can be expressed by any one of the following formulas. The first formula is the definition itself, that is norm T is supremum norm T of x on the condition norm x is less than or equals to 1. Those vectors under this condition norm x is less than or equals to 1, we are collecting all the vectors x in the domain space n which is having a distance either 1 or less than 1. That is all the points on the boundary and interior as well, right? Next, we will find out the definition. The second statement is norm T is supremum norm T of x. Now the condition was replaced. Instead of norm x is less than or equals to 1, now we are writing it as norm x is equal to 1. Now whenever I am writing norm x is equals to 1 means which vectors we are collecting? Only those vectors which are lying on the boundary of your unit sphere, which are lying on the boundary of a unit sphere. Third definition is norm T is equals to supremum norm T of x upon norm of x. Supremum norm T of x upon norm of x, provided x is not equals to 0 and x be any member of the domain space. Okay. Why x is not equals to 0? Because we are taking norm x in the denominator, right? And if x is equals to 0, its corresponding norm value will be 0, where this division or this quotient will not be possible in that case. Therefore, a condition was imposed that x is a non-zero vector. It can be any arbitrary vector in the corresponding norm-linear space. Okay. And the last statement is norm T is equals to inferior k, inferior positive real number k, such that, what such that? It has to satisfy norm T of x less than or equals to k into norm of x for all x. Now, if you remember, this is a definition or rather a condition for checking whether T is a bounded transformation or not. Okay. Whenever such a k is going to exist, we are calling that linear transformation T to be bounded, and this K is called as a bound of that mapping T. Okay, means here the definition of norm T was given by inferior bound of T. Okay, because there may be many possibilities of having the bounds for the mapping T. Among all such bounds possible, we will take inferior value of the bound, and that inferior value of the bound which is going to work as the norm of the operator. Now to prove these four statements are equivalent, there are two ways to prove. Okay, the first way to prove is, if I want to prove these four statements are equivalent, we will one can prove 1 implies 2, 2 implies 3, 3 implies 4, and again 4 implies 1. This is one of the ways to prove the statements are equivalent. But here we can prove it by the another method. The another method I am going to prove is 1 implies and implied by 2, 2 implies and implied by 3, 3 implies and implied by 4, or all these are equal. 1 equal to 2 equal to 3 equal to 4. Okay. Therefore, we will use the last methodology, proving 1 equal to 2 equal to 3 equal to 4. Once I prove this, it will be proved that these four statements are equivalent. Okay, let us proceed to understand the proof. In order to prove the result, we will denote the right side of the first statement by capital M1, right side of the second by capital M2, similarly M3 and M4 as the right hand sides of the statement number 3 and statement number 4. We will recall, in statement number 1, the condition is norm x less than or equals to 1. In statement 2, it is norm x equal to 1. In statement number 3, this is supremum norm T of x upon norm of x. And in the fourth one, this is inferior among the bounds. Okay, now we will start with the statement. Okay, here I am going to consider the two sets. The two sets are the subsets of a domain space capital N. In the first set, I am collecting all such vectors x in N having a distance norm x is equal to 1. Means exactly all unit vectors I am considering. Means this will be a collection of all the boundary points of the unit sphere. Okay, and in the second set, we are considering again collection of those vectors of the domain space N having the condition norm x less than or equals to. Means those vectors which have a distance or which has a length equal to 1 and less than 1 also. Okay, therefore, if I say, if we look at both the sets, it is very clear that the first set, that is only boundary points, will be a subset of the second one. That is, in the second set, we are considering boundary points along with the interior of the unit sphere, right? Now, next, we will consider T images of both the types of vectors. Therefore, may I write this T of x on the condition norm x equal to 1, x belongs to N is again a subset of T of x, norm x is less than or equals to 1. Okay. In the next, in the next step, we will consider the norm values on both the sides. Okay, means for this vector, for every element of for every vector of this set, we will consider its norm. Therefore, as these A is a subset of B, therefore, if I consider the corresponding norms, the that subset relation is going to hold again, right? Therefore, this is norm T of x again will be a subset of norm T of x. Norm x is less than or equals to 1. And on the next step, we will consider the supremum on both the sides. Now, here is the set A subset of B. Therefore, if we take a suprema on both the sides, supremum of A must be less equal by supremum of B. Okay, the same here we have taken. Supremum of the first set is less equal by supremum of the second set, right? But according to the definition, this first is M1, right side of the first statement, and this is right side of the second statement. Therefore, this is giving us a first inequality. Please keep this in mind. M1 is less than or equal to M2 is our first finding, right? Coming to the next, let me start with M3. What is M3 defined? This is supremum norm T of x upon norm of x, provided x is not equals to 0 and x is the member of a normed linear space. Okay. Now, in the next step, what I will do, as this denominator norm of x is a scalar, rather a non-zero scalar, right? Now, this non-zero scalar, we will try to insert in the norm. Okay. Now, this non-zero scalar is non-negative as it is the norm of value of some vector. Therefore, what we will get to the next step. This is norma t of x upon norm of x. But knowing t is linear, again I can observe that scalar norm of x in that bracket t of x. Therefore, this will be actually of the case t of x by alpha, which I can write as t of x by alpha, right? Therefore, this statement will be supremum norm of t of x upon norm of x, provided x is in n and x is not equals to 0. Now what we will do, whatever is this vector we have found, x upon norm of x, we know obviously it is going to be a unit vector, because the property is known to us whenever a vector is divided by its length. Whenever a vector is divided by its own length, surely it is going to give you a unit vector, okay? Or you can check also, if I take a norm on both the sides, let me write y is equal to x upon norm of x. This bracketed quantity we will assume as some new vector, say y. Therefore, if I write y is equal to x upon norm of x, take norm on both the sides, norm y will be norm of x upon norm of x. But norm of x is a non-negative scalar, therefore we can take it out with a modulus, but no need of a modulus as it is the non-negative value. Therefore, if I take this norm of x outside the norm value, it will be we will remain with norm of x upon norm of x. And since it gives you the value 1, therefore this y is a unit vector. Therefore, let me replace the value in the above statement. Therefore, m3 is equals to supremum. This is y. Therefore, this is norm of t of y. What's the condition we are getting for the y vector? Norm y is equal to 1 and y must be a vector in 1. Y must be a vector in n. Why y is a vector in n? Because x is a vector in n and it is multiplied by a suitable scalar 1 upon norm of x, and we know as n is a linear space, it is closed under the scalar multiplication, right? Therefore, this y is a member of a non-linear space n, no doubt. But if you look at this right side again, this is nothing but our m2 value. M2 is supremum norm of t of x on the condition norm x is equal to 1. Okay, therefore we are getting the second statement point 2 as m3 equal to m2. Okay, coming to the next discussion, again starting with same m3. M3 is supremum norm t of x upon norm of x, provided x not equal to 0, x is in n. Okay, now I want to remove the supremum value from the right side. Removing supremum. Okay, actually this equation tells us m3 is supremum value, that is, this is least upper bound of the set. Which set? Norm t of x upon norm of x, provided x is not equals to 0. As it is least upper bound, means it is surely an upper bound. Therefore, if I remove a supremum from the right side, we will get m3 as an upper bound, rather least upper bound. Therefore, m3 is greater equal by an arbitrary value of the set norm t of x upon norm of x for all x in n, provided x is not equal to 0, right? As x is not equal to 0, let me shift this norm of x on the left side. Therefore, we got it as m3 norm of x is greater equal by norm t of x. Let me rewrite the equation as norm t of x is less than or equals to m3 into norm of x. M3 into norm of x. Now, if you look at the equation very carefully, this is of the type norm t of x less than or equals to some constant into norm of x. Therefore, this constant is actually a bound for t. This constant m3, this value m3 will act as a bound for the continuous linear transformation t. Okay, but what is M4 definition? If you just recall M4, M4 is inferior of the bounds where k is the bound which satisfies the inequality norm t of x less than or equals to k into norm of x, right? Therefore, according to the definition of M4, M4 is the inferior value of that bound, okay? And here we are getting any other bound, M3. Therefore, what will be a relation between M4 and M3? Surely M4 is less equal by M3. This is our next equation, say point number 3. Okay. Now let me use the fourth equation. What's the fourth equation? here norm t of x is less than or equals to m4 into norm of x. Why we have written this inequality? Because m4 is the inferior among all such bounds which satisfies the condition norm t of x is less than or equals to k into norm of x. Therefore, m4 is one of the bound. Okay, m4 is one of the bound. If m4 is one of the bound, we can write that inequality as norm t of x is less than or equals to m4 into norm of x. Okay, now let me put a condition. Norm x is less than or equals to 1. Then here on the right, we will get the value as m4 into 1, which is m4. Therefore, this is norm t of x is less than or equals to m4. But we know in the first definition, norm we have defined m1 as supremum of norm t of x, supremum of norm t of x, provided norm x is less than or equals to 1. And m1 is the supremum. Supremum means least upper bound of all such norm t of x. But here we are getting m4 as the bound, upper bound of the set. Which set? Norm t of x, norm x is less than or equals to 1. Means what I am trying to say, m1 is the least upper bound of the set, and from this inequality I can say m4 is an upper bound of the set. Norm t of x provided norm x is less than or equals to 1. m1 is least upper bound, m4 is an arbitrary upper bound. Therefore, surely an inequality holds as m1 is less equal by m4. Let me call this as equation number 0.4. Okay. By here, I have told you already, by definition of m1, norm t is the supremum of norm t of x. And from the equation m4, it will be an upper bound, and here m4 is the supremum value, also less than or equals to m4. Okay, that I have already explained. Now we'll try to combine all the 4 equations. Okay, let us recall all the 4 equations. m1 less than or equals to m2, m2 equal to m3, m3 greater equal by m4, m1 less equal by m4. Let me just rewrite all the equations. m1 greater equal by m2, m2 equal to m3, m3 greater equal by m4, m4 greater equal by m1. Okay. Now look at this very carefully. Middle one holds directly. m1, m2 equal to m3, m2 equal to m3. Now look at the equation very carefully. m1 greater equal by m2 greater equal by m1. What does it mean? m1 greater equal by m2 greater equal by m1 means m1 equal to m2 holds, right? m2 equals to m3 already we have. Now let us prove m3 equals to m4. How can I prove m3 equals to m4? m1 equal to m2, m1 greater equal by m2 equal to m3 greater equal by m4 greater equal by m1. Now m3 is greater equal by m4. m4 is greater equal by m1 and m1 greater equal by m2, m1 equal to m2, m2 equal to m3. Let me repeat, m3 greater equal by m4, but m4 greater equal by m1, but m1 already we have proved equal to m2 equal to m3. Therefore, we have this inequality as m3 greater equal by m4 greater equal by m3, which is giving us m3 equal to m4. Hence, m1 equal to m2 equal to m3 equal to m4. All the 4 statements are equivalent. Therefore, one can find out the norm value of a continuous linear transformation by any one of these 4 statements. By any one of these 4 statements. Supremum norm t of x, norm x less than or equals to 1. Supremum norm t of x, norm x equal to 1. Supremum norm t of x upon norm of x, or inferior among the bounds k which satisfies this inequality. I hope there is no problem with the proof of this theorem. Okay, we will go to understanding one remark. Okay, now what is the third equation of the previous statement? Norm t is equal to supremum norm t of x upon norm of x. Again, if we remove supremum, what will happen? This value norm t of x upon norm t of x upon norm of x will be less equal by norm of x. But if I write norm of if I shift this norm of x on the right, it gives us the inequality norm t of x is less equal by norm t into norm of x. Means whenever we have t to be a continuous linear transformation, that is bounded linear transformation, then norm t will be itself a bound. Norm t will be a bound. Okay, let us look one example to prove that mapping is continuous linear transformation. Okay, the statement is M be a closed linear subspace of a normed linear space capital N, and if capital T is a natural mapping of N onto N by M. N by M is a quotient norm space. Already we have discussed, right? Defined by T of x is equal to x plus M. Then show that T is a continuous linear transformation for which norm T is less than or equals to 1. This is what we want to prove. Okay. Now here the things given to us are M is closed subspace of capital N. Then the quotient space N by M is a norm linear space with a norm. Norm of a coset. Because the n elements in this quotient space are the cosets. Cosets of M. And is of the type x plus M or M plus x, right? Therefore, x plus M in N by M is given by norm of x plus M is inferior norm of x plus M for M in M, right? Therefore, the mapping T is from N into N by M defined by T of x is equal to x plus M. Now, we want to prove actually the mapping T is continuous linear transformation such that norm T is less than or equal to. Means in this example, 3 steps to prove actually. That is the mapping T linear, the mapping T is either continuous or bounded, and lastly norm T is less than or equals to 1. Let us start for proving the first, checking the first value, first result, that is T is linear or not. For this, let us start with 2 arbitrary vectors x, y in N, alpha, beta, b, any scalars. Then consider T of alpha x plus beta y. What the definition says, T of x is x plus M. Therefore, T of alpha x plus beta y will be alpha x plus beta y plus M. Okay, let us use the addition and scalar multiplication definition we have discussed in the quotient norm spaces. What is the definition then? This alpha x plus beta y plus M can be written as alpha x plus M plus beta y plus M, right? Now let us make use of the definition of a scalar multiplication in quotient norm spaces. What is the definition then? Alpha x plus M is alpha times x plus M. Similarly, beta y plus M is beta times y plus M. But x plus M is nothing but T image of x, and y plus M is nothing but T image of y. Hence, the mapping T is linear. Now let us go to prove that the mapping T is continuous. And as already we know that the mapping is linear, therefore proving continuous is equivalent to prove bounded. Therefore here we will try to prove it is bounded. Okay. Now to prove bounded, let me consider norm value of T of x. What is norm value of T of x? By the definition, T of x is x plus M. Therefore this is norm value of a coset. Norm in the quotient norm space we have defined with this formula. Inferior norm x plus M provided M belongs to M, less than or equals. Now here, if I remove inferior, what is the relation between an arbitrary value of this set and its inferior value? If we know the relation, actually, arbitrary value of this set is greater or equal by the inferior value. Therefore, here we have written less than or equals to norm of x plus M for all M in M, right? For all M, we are saying the statement this inequality is true, but as M is a subspace, therefore itself it is a linear space, therefore it must contain additive identity, that is a zero vector. And if we have a zero vector, let us put in the above statement. Therefore, norm of T of x less equal by norm of x plus M. Let me put M is equal to 0. Therefore, it giving us norm of x plus 0 is equal to norm of x. That is, norm of T of x is less than or equals to norm of x. The bound value here it is 1. That is the inequality we have obtained is norm T of x is less than or equals to 1 into norm of x. 1 into norm of x. Therefore, the mapping T is bounded. Hence, T is continuous linear transformation. Let us prove the third point. In the third point, we want to prove norm T less than or equals to 1. Therefore, actually here in equation number 0.5, we have proved norm T of x is less than or equals to norm of x. Therefore, I can write norm T of x upon norm of x is less than or equals to 1. Now let us make use of third statement of our operator norm. Therefore, taking supremum on both the sides. Supremum norm T of x upon norm of x. To the right, we have a value, a single value. Therefore, no point to take a supremum. That is, if every value of the set is less than or equals to 1, its supremum must be less than or equals to 1. Hence, norm T is less than or equals to 1. This is very quite interesting example we have proved today. Therefore, in today's lecture, we have seen one theorem and one example. The theorem is important. The mapping T from the theorem we have seen is there are 4 statements for finding the norm of a continuous linear transformation. We have proved all the statements are equivalent. And in the second example, we have seen that how from n to n by m, there is a, from n to n by n, there is a mapping T n to n by m with norm value is less than or equals to 1. Okay. Thank you for watching this lecture. Thank you.